Okay. We go. We ride. Let's call in the cavalry. Welcome back. I've been excited to get this started for a long time, and it's finally here. We're going to be doing Build Lab streams, just like what we do for Warframe, in Genshin Impact as well. I think that this game is very compatible with the format that we have in Warframe. Indeed, I feel like most ongoing games is what I usually call them. Most games where you build up a sort of catalog of builds and there's sort of tools you can use to address the challenges the game presents you. Most games with that format, I think, could fit this format. So we're going to do it in Genshin Impact. I think this is the game I'm the second most prepared to do it in. I actually think in some ways it's more useful in Genshin Impact. There's sort of more of a reason to do a discussion like this in Genshin Impact. I guess that's because of the elemental system. If you're playing Genshin Impact and you need an electro character for a type of team or a type of reaction, well, Lisa is from the tutorial process. You have her for free, and you might just wish to use a character of that element, or conversely, you like the character, but you just don't know how to apply them, possibly their reaction. Again, there's sort of more about how the character could fit into your life while playing the game. And so I feel like it's a lot more actionable to say, this is how you use Lisa. I feel like that's, you can use her other ways. It's not the only ways you can use her, but that seems more useful in this game, almost a little more than in Warframe where we've been doing this so far. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a little rough, of course, because I haven't done this in Genshin Impact before, but I wrote a little outline for how I think it ought to go, a little similar to how we do it in Warframe. And as usual, that means there are timestamps in the description and like chapters or whatever they become on YouTube that you can use to jump around if you're watching this as a YouTube video. Cool. Let's say hello, and then we'll start by going over her abilities. Kind of same as in Warframe. Asymptomatic, welcome back. Yes, wall latching to avoid getting Lisa's perfectly lovely, but I just don't want to hear them right now, voice lines. Pistol Whip, what's up? You said I'm nursing a migraine, so just popping in for solidarity. No raid since I missed my stream. Hope you're doing okay. Sorry to hear. Happy to have you, though. I was doing your parlay earlier. Pistol Whip, it was fun. And Shalstev, welcome back. How you doing? What's up? Yeah, the idea was we would get started by just going over her kit. I think this is a good place to start in pretty much any discussion of characters like this. I do it in Warframe as well. I think it's good because even if players think of themselves as knowing what the character can do, sometimes there are little things to add. Pretty often I've misunderstood how like a thing worked when going over this process, and a lot of the time I want to focus on things that other people maybe don't. For example, for Lisa, I think the key passive, the key part of her kit is this. I would almost say this is almost enough by itself. You could almost stop the conversation right here. So let's start there, actually. Proaxel and Darius, welcome back. I too, Proaxel says, have a bench in my teapot solely dedicated to stopping character idle stuff. Indeed. I should get such a thing. I need places to sit down. If you interact with something like that, then they'll silence for a little bit. I wish you could switch that off. For a game with such a large creator community, it's kind of weird to not have more features that call to that, but actually a lot of games lack that kind of stuff. Okay, yeah, we can, if people have lots of comments already, so let's just get started. Ace and Pistol Whip, your recommendations for build stuff we'll get to after we go over the abilities. But yeah, let's get into it then. Cool. Lisa, so what's the deal with this passive? Well, I like this because defense is very rare thing to reduce in Genshin Impact. This is a new way to increase your damage output against enemies, to make them vulnerable to damage in a way that is quite unique. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, this is a separate multiplier. That is, the enemy takes more damage from everything, period, separately from their vulnerability to an elemental damage type. It's not elemental resistance. And it's not like this just adds to attack. In some games, attack and defense are two sides of the same coin. but I believe in Genshin Impact, this literally is just you do 15% more damage to that enemy, no matter what other damage you were doing. This gets stronger the more optimized your damage is, because it will be harder and harder the better your damage output is, the more different damage boosts you have. Getting a 15% damage boost from some other source gets harder and harder the more of everything else you have. But there's literally only like 4 places in the entire game where you can get defense reduction, so this will pretty much always stand alone. You will practically never have a team where you have other damage defense decreases. And it's really easy to get to. You just use her burst. Her burst lasts a good amount of time. It's fine. It does damage in an area. Do I have it charged? That'd be convenient. I don't, so we'll do that. But the main thing for me is that you can apply a pretty unique way of making enemies vulnerable to further damage, something that not many other units have. That in of itself is kind of a call to action. This character is also part of the tutorial process, which is one reason we chose to do them first. And I think that's noteworthy because there's a perception sometimes that the early game characters or whatever are not as good or something. That is not really the case. I do think there's some strange design at work that maybe we'll talk about later. But yeah, I wouldn't write the character off because they are free. That doesn't really matter. But it does have some odd consequences. We'll talk about that later. Ace, you said, I feel like the math is more complicated than taking the reduction at face value. Putting aside the magic line graphs, my preferred language is reduces enemy defenses. Yes. Right, anyway, suffice to say, this increases damage in a rare way. Is to my understanding. It's nothing as simple as like it's just attack, and then that would not be a very strong damage increase. The fact that this is noticeable at all means it, even if you didn't know how it worked, it must be, separate from most damage increases. Anyway, let's back up for a second. That's great. Good call to action for this character. Let's back up for a second and do it the way I would want to do for most characters, which is starting with their Ascension stat. To my knowledge, you can't easily see this always, but you can see it this way. It's Elemental Mastery for Lisa. Every character has something that they get as they rank up and hit different Ascension levels. For Lisa, it's Elemental Mastery. I think that's kind of nice. Her burst applies Electro really quickly, like a lot, so you could use that for reactions, and being that she is a Catalyst user, you can use her to quickly trigger a reaction by flicking out a normal attack if you want. It's not so bad to have the Elemental Mastery. Do I feel like it's incredible? I guess I'd kind of rather have Energy Recharge, but what are you going to do? She's a Catalyst user. She's Electro. Abilities. Yep, normal attacks. They sure are normal attacks. She has a somewhat notorious charge attack. It's very slow. And it has an odd, it hits in a weird way. You can cancel it at odd times. I'm not very good at that. But that's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. Her normal attack, I don't know, man, it's fine. Some people use Lisa's normal attacking, charge attacks, and weaving in her pressed skill, which we'll talk about in a sec, to trigger lots of Electro-Dendro catalyze reactions. And you do get pretty good AoE from that. Her tap skill will bounce the enemies in a very small area. It has a weird mechanic like that. I'll try to show that really quick. If you could just group up for me, that would be so good, like the best. So you see how both of those enemies got a charge from her skill, even though it's single target, It does have like a small, quite small, you just saw, small, but it does have an area of effect. So what does it do? Her skill has 2 parts. You can press it or hold it. Pressing it gives them these stacks and does a little damage. It triggers Electro. So if you wanted to do reactions with it rapidly, you could use her tapped skill to do that. Her charge attack also applies charges with one of her passives that she gets from leveling up, and they stack up to 3. Once you have some stacks, or even without them, you can hold her skill, charge it up, and then every enemy in the area gets hit, and they take more damage for each stack they have. The damage can be quite high. The base damage of that held version is extremely high. It may or may not actually do really high damage, depending on the extent to which you've actually built damage on her. And Electro also lacks some of the damage magnifying reactions, like Pyro and Hydro doing Vaporize, and Pyro and Cryo doing Melt. So having a very high base damage number on an electro attack is maybe a little bit deceiving. You know, you won't be able to multiply that number in the same way you could if it was like, if this was Pyro, that would be absolutely insane. But it's still a lot of damage. Setting it up, yeah, like provided that you hit multiple enemies at once with her charge attacks or a skill, it can be pretty doable. And her Constellation 6 also applies full stacks of the effect to nearby enemies when you swap in, on a pretty short cooldown. Note that the cooldown of it when you press it is basically nothing, but the held cooldown is very long. It's 16 seconds. She doesn't make a huge amount of energy without doing the hold version, but there is also a constellation for that. It's not that one, it's this one. Still, we're building up to a character that with an 80 cost burst, I'm hurting for energy. I would want the energy. Her burst we talked about, but I'll show you what it looks like. Actually, these enemies being here is great. You drop a lightning rose. It's got a modest AoE. It will repeatedly zap enemies in its area. Enemies that are made airborne will sometimes fly away, but this ability has a reputation for knocking enemies about, and it doesn't, provided they're grounded. It's really not a big deal. The total damage is pretty okay. You saw it zaps them pretty much every second. So even though the damage on the skill seems very low, you know, 62% at level 9, that doesn't sound like much. The total damage is actually rather fair. And because it hits pretty often, it's great at enabling reactions. Pretty reasonable ability. Passive, not really anything to say. She's got a crafting passive. Constellations, you get a defensive one for charging her skill. And you get this one, which, like, I don't really... Lightning Rose now unleashes 1 to 3 lightning bolts when it attacks. Well, it already unleashed 1 lightning bolt, so it just unleashes a random amount between 1 and 3 now? Being completely honest with you all, as I always am, I have no idea what this does. But it probably just means sometimes it can hit more than one target. Cool, fine, whatever. Vampire, you said Lisa has a lot of trivia and small things making her kit really weird. I don't think that weird, but definitely there is a lot of, I like the word trivia, a lot of things that I'm not sure it's that useful to most players to know, which is why we're not going to talk about them that much. But I will say that this is a character whose depths exist if you want to plumb them, and you could consider pursuing that on like a theory crafting website or a specific character guide. If you really want to get into that, I don't think that the most useful way to apply Lisa for most people's accounts really involves that information. So we're not going to go into too much detail about it here. If you would just not talking to you, I'm talking to the Hillchurls, that would be great. Folks, please, please don't, this is unnecessary. There we go. Anyway, yeah, as you say, her Constellation 4 is probably a lot of damage in an AoE. A quick note that at the time of this recording, the starting characters Lisa, Kaya, and Amber only, Lisa, Kaya, and Amber only, do not drop from character banners, character event banners. These banners. Or this banner, I don't think. They only drop from here. Which it does technically say, if you dig into this details page that is designed to be confusing. Yeah, anyway, you should know that if you notice an odd lack of those characters as you play and accumulate more characters, that's because they're absent from those banners at this moment. Weirdly, other characters that you receive for free as part of the tutorial process, but not at the same time as you receive these 3, are in those banners. I don't know, that's weird. You can also frequently buy, at the time of this recording, these characters from Paimon's Bargains, meaning you can get guaranteed constellations of them quite regularly. This is noteworthy because at the time of this recording, I wonder how many times I'll say that, this is usually characters that are from the vanilla version of the game. That is, it hasn't been updated much since the game came out, which it might be in the future. Wonder if they'll keep the starting characters generally in there. You would think they would, but I just wanted to note that this is not only at the time of this recording. I would kind of expect this to change. But you can frequently buy Lisa constellations here, which I'd probably recommend you do. Really just the leveling their skill and burst ones, and you get the lightning rose one at only 3, which is her burst. So I feel like that's kind of good, but I don't know. I don't personally think that this character is immensely stable. I feel like doing her burst is good value. It does good damage, you get a good amount of electro applications, and you get the defense shred. But that's like sort of it. I have never been that impressed by her skill. Even the held version, even given that I have it at a pretty high level, even that I've invested decently in Lisa, I've just never been that impressed by this damage. Also note that because it's quite consolidated, it's one big hit and then you have to wait 16 seconds. It's quite prone to, you don't crit and then all your crit stats did nothing for the entire fight. So it is maybe prone to variance in a way that you also probably won't, most players, commit your stronger critical stat artifacts, gear, to Lisa. Or at least I would not recommend doing that. So let's talk about what we would recommend. I think we can move on to weapons now. Any closing thoughts about Lisa's kit, folks? Talents, constellations? I guess I'll call the section that in the notes. Take your time. Liquid, welcome back. What's going on? You came at a good time. We just finished the talent and constellation section. We're going to move on to weapons and artifacts, build stuff. Personal build stuff. Ooh, that's weird. Asymptomatic, you said, anecdotally, my tutorial time with Lisa comes from slime friction. Overload, pyro electro, does pyro damage, so it's not helpful against pyro slimes. Superconduct, cryo electro, is cryo damage, so no help against cryo slimes. Electro is somewhat odd in early Genshin Impact to me as a result. Indeed, and Lisa is also the catalyst character that is elemental normal attack character that you get to start out with, so that's maybe more noticeable than normal. Amber, of course, can do her charge attack fire arrows, but Lisa would be the first character you'd have like throwing around as much electro as you want, and it's weirdly ineffective against cryo and pyro slimes. Just because it came up back there, I don't really want to get into too many specific details, because again, you can just go on this character's kit, which is honestly probably just weird because she's from early in the game for a long time. But since it came up earlier, Vampire, you mentioned how some reactions seem to give you multiple stacks for her skill. You saw back there that I did overload off a campfire, and about a minute ago, those enemies got multiple stacks from my skill because I triggered overload. That seems so arbitrary to me, but I guess it doesn't say it does that, right? No. And I showed you all before that it does have like a very small AoE if enemies are very close together. You could group enemies up to make that easier, but we'll talk about that a little later, I think. Yeah, I have no idea why that's that way. Are there any notable attacks that can interrupt her hold skill? I don't know. You mean cancel it or something? I don't know. Again, today, I guess I'm not trying to be pushy when I say, let's not worry about that right now. If you have a way to use that in the second half of the stream, we should talk about it. But I am quite convinced, having dug into this quite a bit myself, that for a lot of players, it's maybe distracting to focus too much on that stuff. She has a lot of weird little things in the way her skill works, and my takeaway for you is I just think it's sufficient to say it's not that good. It can be useful in some weird situations. Those are neat. I want to talk about grouping enemies with Animo later, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Not to say it's bad to bring that up at all. Just that I would want to make sure someone didn't get scared away from this very useful drop your burst and get value character just because they're worried about all the weird intricacies with her abilities. Oh, you meant enemy attacks to watch out for. She does have that one constellation. This is also super unclear. Her constellation 2 increases resistance to interruption. I feel like she already has like nearly infinite resistance to interruption while doing her skill. I'm not sure I have ever been interrupted while doing this except by like dying. Let's just hold it for a bit. There, I think I got hit with overload from the campfire and that guy throwing a Molotov, an electro Molotov. And that's why I got knocked back. So overload, I guess. I wonder if other reactions do that. I would be willing to bet that electrocharge doesn't interrupt it. Let's see. Did that even work, actually? Hold on. Is electrocharge there? There we go. Seems fine to get hit with electrocharged a few times, but who knows if it's more than that. That's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, you know, I might have just been dunking on her. Might just have been dunking on her skill, but it's not like you can't use it. So go figure. All right, well, do you get enough energy to drop her burst frequently enough? With my current builds, often not. So let's talk about that. Indeed, having this long ass thing, it's long to do, and then it's got a long cooldown, be pretty much the only way you get energy, really begs the question: how is that burst ever going to happen if that's meant to be the valuable thing? This brings us quite nicely, then, I think, to build stuff, weapons and artifacts. I am currently using prototype Amber and a mix of Shimenawas and Gladiator pieces. I'm pretty sure these are mostly here because they're what I have, / like they just have decent substats. But we will talk about that. Prototype Amber first. I think this deserves especially special mention. This is a pretty noteworthy catalyst in and of itself. You could do a whole thing on just Prototype Amber. A couple of you mentioned this immediately when the stream started. This allows Lisa to kind of, sort of, maybe not enough, kind of heal. You regenerate the team's health when you do a burst, and Lisa restores flat amounts of energy for a while. This helps quite a bit with her getting her burst back, and it provides some healing to the team. You could also consider the HP percentage that it gives to be relevant when holding her skill, because you do, as you've seen, kind of just have to stand there. So it's not the worst thing in the world if she's just a little bit bulkier than normal. I wish it was something else, though. Yeah, and then, you know, the healing. It's hard in Genshin Impact, right? But I consider this, you got like 2/3 of a healer. Do you have a little splash of healing or some shields in the team? Then maybe it's fine. But without getting too much into it with Prototype Amber, I just think this is one, and not the only, good example of a character where I want the energy regeneration, and I kind of want to add Lisa to teams for utility, but she doesn't have a huge amount of it. You know, it's mostly I want the good electro output and that defense reduction. So this shores up, makes her a bit of a more robust inclusion in the team, and it also helps her get her burst back. But this effect doesn't have a cooldown, so having her burst be 20-second cooldown is kind of not ideal. Whatever. And then the artifacts. The stats I'm choosing are energy recharge, electro damage, crit. I think the only real damage I'm getting out of her most of the time is just the upfront lightning bolts, and I desperately want her burst, so no way I'm getting rid of the energy recharge. In fact, I can absolutely level this up, so let's do that. And yeah, then you get attack from the set bonuses, but again, mostly these are here in these sets simply because I had good pieces of this set. I just don't feel like there are any artifacts that feel amazing for Lisa. What I was using previously was Gilded Dreams. Now, the idea of this is that you get a bunch of elemental mastery and then she inflicts electro a lot. But thinking about the reactions I want her to trigger, it's kind of catalyze a lot of the time. So, I mean, she has some elemental mastery passively, and catalyzed teams often benefit because it's an additional damage increase to the hit of Electro. They quite often benefit better from spreading out their stats, like building a modest amount of elemental mastery, like 200 to 300, which I already have, and then, and electro damage and crit. So even if she was going to trigger reactions, a good number of those themes I would still not want to have built more elemental mastery necessarily, or to skew the team even further. And those pieces are in demand. I don't know about you, I'm using Gilded Dreams on a lot of characters. So I think this might be a good character for your filler pieces. You do, it's a lot of damage from her skill. I think the other obvious thing to pick would be Emblem. Yep. Emblem of Severed Fate is another pretty straightforward one. You're just abandoning her skill. You're only going to use it to generate energy, and then her burst does more damage. I just worry that if you had like allowed yourself to continue to keep the skill in the ring, you're gonna have to do it and have it do damage anyway. And then how much damage do you leave on the table by doing this? But if all you're sacrificing is two 18% artifact set bonuses, yeah, maybe just use Emblem. Again, my main problem with Emblem is actually just that it's competing for space with so many characters. If I have a separate set of Emblem of Severed Fate, yeah, I'm kind of sold. But a lot of people probably don't. There are a lot of characters, some of them free characters, that I would recommend putting those pieces on first, and I would want essentially the exact same stats for those characters. So it's not as if I'm gonna give Lisa like the other one that has, different stats. Like this piece that Xiangling has is more or less exactly what I'd want on Lisa, but I would rather give it to Xiangling. That being said, on my account, kind of looks like we do have. I mean, I've just farmed so much Emblem because this set is ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, let's look. Well, the substats are kind of bad, but yeah, nah, forget what I said before. Let's just swap to that, man. Probably have way too much crit rate, but that's okay. We're not here to number crunch optimize the build perfectly. We're just we're just trying to get the job done. As usual, my Wanderers. Ooh, look at that crit damage. Okay, yeah, that'll be fine. She probably needs this. This needs a little bit of help, but yeah. So definitely some options. I would strongly consider going for a mix of good stuff stats on this character. I wouldn't worry too much about building a character that you might use as a supportive piece here and there. I wouldn't break the accounts back over having her have the absolute finest artifacts. Part of the joy of using her for that supportive role is that it doesn't make a huge difference if her personal stats are, not amazing. And this should help quite a bit toward her getting her burst back. It is kind of a shame. I'm perversely tempted to point out that the flat energy restoration from the prototype Amber passive is not affected by energy recharge the last I checked, meaning this has a bit of non-bow, not really anti-synergy, but kind of a non-bow combo with building a ton of energy recharge. This makes me want to run something like Favonius Codex, but I often like using Lisa in situations where I want her to be the healer. So for that reason, I don't want to run Favonius Codex, and aren't I just a little stinker? Be that as it may, for real, I'm probably going to recommend Favonius Codex though. This is of concern because her skill triggering this does require, you hit many targets if there are many targets, but you've got to get the crit. Have you considered Echoes of an Offering? Asymptomatic with the classic. We got to do it every single time. Why? Although slightly more serious answer is wander to, oh, you're not actually going to go, okay, thank you. We're not, no, it's a bad choice. It would be fine. It's good for normal attacking. Wander 2-piece in whatever floating set. Wander comes from roughly gratis from weekly bosses, and Lisa lacks a certain protagonistic energy in my book. So do what I can with a cameo character with no targeted set. Yeah, a little extra elemental mastery here would be fine. Kind of the same philosophy as using loose gladiator pieces. You'll just have them. And if the other pieces you just have are wanderers, yeah, like that's a good choice. Really the exact same reasoning. I think I would just slightly favor the attack percent sets, simply because in a good amount of situations, I think this ability won't benefit almost at all from elemental mastery, whereas the attack will benefit it. And again, in many cases, like if the team is Dendro Electro, I would kind of be fine with elemental mastery or attack. So I would slightly favor attack for like a random good stuff set. She doesn't have any if you build her the way I'm recommending. I think you really need the energy recharge from her clock, meaning that unless the set bonus gives you attack, or I guess your weapon maybe, you don't have any. So I would strongly recommend erring on the side of those attack percent sets, but it's not like Wanderer makes perfect sense. Cool emblem, I can get down with that. Yeah, and maybe erring a little bit more on the side of crit rate. I mentioned earlier how this big whack of damage from her hold skill means that for practicality purposes, while I want to invest roughly equally in crit rate and crit damage, I would rather favor crit rate. Kind of just in general, actually, but on this character in particular, where I'm increasing the odds that I get any benefit out of these stats at all when she does her skill. I would rather have that be on the consistent side. So again, here you can see I would be optimal in a perfect world to have a little more crit damage instead of crit rate, but I would rather keep it like this. And again, it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think we probably talk about where I would use her now, although that does violate where I'm using her currently, switching to Favonius Codex. But let's play a little bit with her using Favonius Codex and just feel it out, just see how it is. Maybe I'll change this theme temporarily to, I'll just put Barbara in or something. Yeah, it's awkward. Whole Hu Tao thing is just we should do a Hu Tao one next week. That's just the whole thing. Yeah, and then the idea is we'll fight a little bit. I'll do dailies with a team featuring Lisa and try to show the build in action a little bit, although that can be a little difficult to do. I'm also gonna, I think there's a weekly boss we can do that would be a good example. A little bit of gameplay stuff, and then we can talk about team implications. But it seems good now to demonstrate what we have and then dig into team stuff. What do you think? And folks, this is the first time we're doing this way, so if you think it would be good to do something differently, absolutely speak up. Don't feel like we have to do it like this just because I'm giving it a try. I had just been kind of waffling with actually starting to do this, and so I thought we owed it to ourselves to just do it. I'm also playing with the lighting in the room. So that's a whole situation. Audio Forces, I missed you coming in earlier. Thank you for resubscribing Tier 1 for 32 months. Welcome back, Audio Forces. I'm sorry I missed you. We were in the middle of the intro. What's up? How you doing? Just updating the timestamp. Cool, let's fight a little bit. So on this team that I've used Lisa on a lot of times, it's a Hu Tao based team. Hu Tao is going to do a bunch of charge attacks enabled by Hydro supportive characters who will give her vaporized damage. And because electrocharged, Electro Hydro, leaves Electro and Hydro on the enemy when it triggers, if you then hit the enemy with Pyro, you get Vaporize and Overload, and you get a lot of free Elemental Mastery, Elemental Reaction damage. Condition Overload. This means that you get a bunch of free damage. Lisa can be pretty good at setting this up with Lightning Rose, provided it's on a big Chongo enemy. You can fairly easily just keep them inside the radius of Lightning Rose. You can see that enemies on the side, not so much, but I don't think that this build is that good at dealing with enemies that are just all over the place anyway. I do think that this Hu Tao's pattern of flying into enemies with a sled of charge attacks like this and triggering those hydro effects while she goes is broadly more stable against single bigger enemies, and Lightning Rose is usually pretty good at hitting those. You can often corral the enemies back in if they run out, stuff like that. So again, a lot of this, like it's maybe not that compatible with dailies. A lot of teams are not that compatible with dailies because they just do too much damage. At my level, my character's levels, they're just going to do too much damage, but it doesn't mean we can't fiddle around with Lisa a little and look at the energy generation. Favonius Codex might be overkill. You know, that's something I was thinking. The crit thing is kind of obnoxious, and it might be overkill. I wanted to shout out Hakshin Ring quickly, actually. We were talking about variants a little bit later, but I think that this is worthy of note. Hakshin Ring. This says, after the character equipped with this weapon triggers an electro elemental reaction, nearby party members of an elemental type involved in the reaction receive a 20% damage bonus for their element, lasting 6 seconds. But it's got no cooldown on giving you the bonuses. This will give Lisa herself and either the Hydro characters or Hu Tao a damage bonus, a 20% elemental damage bonus. Again, kind of like the thing with Prototype Amber, this makes Lisa's contribution to the team a little bit more robust, which I like. It means that she does more. She has a more substantial contribution than literally just dropping her burst and that's it. She provides a few other damage buffs, and here you're getting to see the whole kit and caboodle as I try not to attack this flower with auto aim and instead attack this enemy. Please spawn in here, yes. So whatever difficulty I have triggering the double reactions, you'll see it against bosses. I'll go do that and you'll be able to see pretty clearly. Give me those particles. I'm not wasting a whole rotation on you. Die. There we go. Okay. Glorious. So yeah, Hakshin Ring, definitely another contender. And also craftable. The Inazuma craftable, this is. So nice to have a few top shelf options. What I would pick if I had everything to pick from that are craftable. This has high base attack and low energy recharge. But we're currently seeing if this is enough energy recharge. Now that I added Emblem of Severed Fate, and we have an energy recharge weapon, we're not getting Prototype Amber's energy, and we're not getting the particles from using Favonius Codex, but that's a lot of energy recharge. Like it might well be enough. 241 energy recharge. So, could still be good enough. Ah yes, Hammer of the Mushrooms. One of Lisa's stronger points. Okay, apparently not. Yeah, no, there's probably a way to do this with Catalyst characters, but it depends on the Catalyst character, I'm sure. Okay. Anyway. Kazuha's Burst is really good at Hammer of the Mushrooms. Is it? I thought if you hit the wrong one, it yucked it up. Is that not a thing? I thought you couldn't mess up or reset it. I've never done that before. I'll have to try that. It just hits all of them every single time, and that's okay. That's fun. quick as you like. Yeah, so I'll use this team where it's intended to work, and then I want to talk a little bit about the healing issue that this team now runs into, because in Lisa team building, I think there's a lot of, at the moment, I think Lisa's in a weird kind of homeless place, and I'm not really sure what to do with her some of the time. So we'll talk about that. That feels very grim, but in the name of finding a good place for her, I think it's important to talk about that. So that means doing a little bit of a more meaningful gameplay demo where the team gets to do its thing. You get to see the double reactions. Who owns those reactions? No one knows that, you know. I doubt it's the Hydro characters mostly. So it's Lisa or Hu Tao. And the Vaporize reaction isn't owned by Lisa, so I don't know, man. It's probably mostly Hu Tao. But as we said before, Lisa does have the Elemental Mastery Ascension passive. So you probably aren't losing that much potential reaction damage. I don't know if I would build Lisa like all Elemental Mastery. You can see that we're getting modest upfront damage. If you sacrifice the crit and the electro damage, I think you'd be leaving a lot of damage on the table. Embracing her upfront damage and not elemental reaction damage also validates this idea, because then she benefits from the 20% damage bonus. It makes Emblem of Severed Fate more elegant, and I think you do want that energy recharge. So in a lot of ways, I feel like it makes more sense to build her at least a mix of stats, not all elemental mastery. Even though that would be a way to get around her having like weird damage on some of her stuff. I don't think it really makes sense. And again, one of the times when I might want, you know, better damage boosting from reactions would be a catalyzed team where I want a mix of stats anyway, because I'm still doing the upfront damage of the attack. Okay, so let's go do this boss for the week. If you haven't seen this boss yet and you'd like to avoid spoiling it, I don't think it's like really out of context. It's not really a meaningful spoiler for the game's plot or anything. But if you don't want to see the fight, that's perfectly fine. Just, you know, wait. It won't take me more than 5 minutes, I'm sure. But I bet a lot of you either have seen it or you're just perfectly fine with seeing it. So don't let me decide for you. Maiden Beloved Lisa. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the healing thing, because I really do think that's a strong choice here. But anyway, I just want to show you the team running as intended a little bit more before I talk about teams. We'll talk about this team and then other places you could use Lisa, because for me, that's actually the biggest thing, is I just don't have that many places I think she's sensible. That is, for me, one of my goals for this stream, is to see where other people are using Lisa. Because for me, this is it. Basically only here. Oh, it did go off. Okay. I got hugged, just so I wasn't sure what was happening. But now you'll see when I attack, you'll see Vaporize and Overload. Well, you might not be able to, but I am getting Vaporize and Overload damage. There we go. You saw it pretty clearly there. Pretty effortlessly as well. Like, it doesn't take much effort. I don't want to over invest in this part, so I deal with Hu Tao, but what are you gonna do? Move on to this phase. He's close enough. Hey, well, yeah, I mean, but you can do this. That's nice. Oh, okay, that was that did basically nothing. This team is actually probably going to be kind of bad at this phase, but that's fine. So yeah, I don't know, Lisa's thing being stationary does feel, you know, when enemies are really spread out like this, maybe it doesn't have great compatibility. It doesn't hit them very easily when enemies are organized this way. But not the end of the world. And that is giving us a lot of energy. That's not so bad. But you can see when enemies are in a loose group like this, it's not all that likely that you're not going to trigger Overload in this case, but also that they won't just be out of it to some extent. So I don't know how good it is for stuff like that. This theme is really bad for this phase, but whatever, it's part of the demonstration. Not good. You can see the charge is pretty nice, though. That does feel like enough energy recharge to me, the way I'm using her here. We'll definitely talk about that later, too. I think the defense reduction thing, in practice, you're often not going to be bringing Lisa on a team with a lot of Electro, is something I want to talk about later. Deadlier monsters incoming. Nobody wants that. I'd considered this fight quite easy, but I know it's because I had better AoE now. There we go, it's fine. Whoosh. Now we get big bongo damage phase. Lisa's notoriously extreme Japanese voice actress noises for your listening experience. And you can see once it gets going, absolutely unholy levels of damage. We spent like 3 minutes on the ad phase of the fight, and I beat the actual boss in mere seconds. Very nice. Very nice. Cool. Wow. Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's talk about teams, I think. I'm not sure there's that much else I want to show you for just a bit of light gameplay. That should be fine. We might do weeklies with some of the other things. If you all have ideas for teams you want to show, we might do weeklies with those. But yeah, overall, just a bit slow with her skill, and the energy recharge can be a little squeezed. But her burst sure does get the job done. It's a great way to get a lot of electro output if you want to do a bunch of reactions off of that, and you get the defense shred as a really good extra bonus. I'm kind of interested in there being a little more than that, so I'm pretty interested in a supportive weapon, like some kind of damage buff weapon that supports the party on this character. And this is a whole can of worms, whole donut. A whole donut. Let's break here, since that's a natural point. We'll do the ARRchive Parley, and then get into teams. So if you have teams you want to recommend, if you have places you use Lisa, and gear you use on Lisa that is different from what we've talked about, I would like to talk about that. We'll definitely talk about Maiden Beloved on Lisa. I actually think that's a pretty good idea in some ways. I think that checks out from a theory perspective. Maiden Beloved Lisa. Maiden Beloved is a sometimes underrated artifact set. I think people just think of it as being, oh, it's healing, but we also have Ocean Nude Clam, and I don't know. It's when you need more healing, and Ocean Nude Clam is when you have too much or more than enough healing. But I mean, anyway, could one not use Ocean Nude Clam to make her damage feel more substantial? you will try. Asymptomatic, I suspect, will try, but yeah, we'll talk about that. In all seriousness, I want to hear what you've been doing with Lisa for that stuff. For this part of the stream, just a quick thank you to going below decks. The Audio Forces, I'm really sorry I missed you before. Thank you for the tier 1 sub. I missed you toward the beginning of the stream. And Ace and Faster the Human, thank you for the recent subs as well. Thanks for supporting the show. Without your support, I would not be able to keep doing this. And Asymptomatic is my patron as well, so an awful lot of support all around. And Bertways, thank you for the follow. Bertways, you followed while I was offline, so hello. Hope you're lurking away. Would love to talk to you sometime. If you have any questions about anything, just feel free to chime in. It doesn't absolutely need to be about Lisa. Everything is about Lisa if you try hard enough. That's a dangerous precedent I just set. I'm even wearing purple for the Electro. A similar-ish shade of purple, too. Okay, let's get out of here. Hello, and welcome back to my Twitch ARRchive Parley. the part of the show where I try to keep you entertained while I hit the restroom by recording a little Q&A for you to listen to, instead of running ads or some other nonsense. This question is from the number 5, the rest of the word 5, and then cyanide. 5 cyanide, who asks, why do you name these videos all the same thing? Oh, the streams, probably. All right, well, I'll read the rest. It makes it confusing to find which thing is which because they're all named the same thing. It's really unhelpful. Why are you so bad at naming? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I am bad at that. What this person is referring to, I think, is stream naming, stream, let's say, also archive naming conventions. Here's the situation. When I am live streaming, the title of the stream isn't it's not good if it's a video title a lot of the time, because at any given moment we're not really talking about a specific, ultra specific thing, unless the topic of the stream is something a bit more general, like this stream, Lisa, sure. But even then, a lot of people just don't read the title of the stream. I'm frequently asked when I'm streaming a game, frequently people ask, what game is this? And it's like it says in the right below the stream, it says right there what game it is. Those people are just trying to break the ice. It's fine, but just to say that wouldn't be very helpful. So what I need to do, 5 cyanide, what I need to do not give me cyanide 5 times. I need to retitle the streams after they are finished. And I kind of need to do that anyway most of the time, because these streams, like this stream, the Build Lab streams, are going to become stream archive videos on YouTube anyway, where some people are already watching this. So I kind of have to title them that way anyway. Now, Twitch automatically saves archives for a little while. It depends whether you're a partner. I'm partnered on Twitch, or an affiliate or not. But they don't save them forever automatically. If you make a highlight of a thing from your stream, Twitch saves them forever, and you can upload videos to Twitch like on YouTube. So I can make highlights that are just the entire stream and then title them whatever I would want to title them, and then you're good. And I am trying very hard. I've been much better this past week about consistently after every stream just doing that, because it takes a second for the highlight to do its thing. And if it's these streams, I need to send them over to the Bootleg Builds YouTube channel, which is where people can watch them when they want to see it as an archive on YouTube. So I need to get better at doing this. I'm sorry. That aside, stream names. It's weird because there's also good things that are different in another way. Having a consistent name for a thing is good, but I think when people scroll through Twitch looking for something to watch, which not everybody does, but when people do that, it isn't so good for it to be the same thing every time for a few reasons. The first reason is that I think it gets lost in a sea of similar things, but I try to title my streams quite differently than other people do. It's very common on Twitch for the frontmost thing in the stream's title to be a claim of authority, and I try very hard to avoid those. You shouldn't listen to me because I have any perceived authority on the subject. You should listen to me because my ideas are useful and fun, if you consider them useful and fun. You shouldn't listen to me because I'm adventure rank 60 or mastery rank 30 in Warframe, or I've done this for 5 years in a bunch of different games, or I'm a YouTube or a Twitch person. Caring about people having just raw seniority like that is not intellectually useful, and I try very hard to avoid that kind of thing. Now, it gets you less views. Like most people do respond to that type of thing, but why can't we just have a community for people discussing that isn't full of those people? We can do that. So I do try to title the streams differently than other people do, but I kind of want them to be something recognizable. Like, I have this idea, I don't know if this actually works at all, by the way, but I have this idea that if I title things like the Build Lab, every week, people will come back and remember that name. But I don't know how effective that is on Twitch. On YouTube, that's a pretty big thing. Having a name or a naming convention for a stream, it doesn't have to be a name for the show, but like, here's a very simple example. Tierzu, that channel, like most of his videos will be named something like, is blank animal OP? Question mark. Like that's a name for the video, even though it's not like a title as per se. It's a naming convention that people recognize. So even if your thumbnail isn't like the same in some subtle way, which I think it should be ideally, but that can be tricky for some types of videos, you can still call to that somehow. I feel like on Twitch that isn't that effective, and I don't really know why. I feel like it should be effective. Being around at the same time or having a schedule is more important on Twitch to some extent, but it's important on YouTube, I guess. People say it's important on YouTube. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm just nerding out about YouTube and Twitch now. Sorry for the frustration. I'm trying really hard to do this better. If you want to ask a question that you see answered the next time we do one of these, you can do that using a link I'm posting in chat right now. People in the ARRchive community, it would be very difficult for you to know what stream that would be answered in. So you gotta watch the live streams for that part. For now, on with the show. A few other thank yous to folks for supporting the stream. Free William, thank you for raising your Patreon from $5 to $9 a month. You've regained Parley, kind of longer versions of the Q&A thing I just did. Those are available free on the Pantaloon Saloon channel, of course, for everyone to listen to. Looking forward to hearing what you decide to have me talk about. And Asymptomatic, thank you for the $64.07 tip. Very generous tip of yours, and you also subscribed and are a patron, so much thanks are in order. Let's talk about your suggestion to run Maiden Beloved on Lisa. A very one of the things ever made to suggest. Maiden Beloved. So the idea here would be that you'd run Prototype Amber, and then Lisa would provide more substantial healing with Maiden Beloved's buff. Let's pull that up. Character healing effectiveness, 15%. And when you use an elemental skill or burst, right? Yep. It increases healing received by all party members. Now, to my knowledge, healing received and healing effectiveness are multiply each other, their benefits. They're not just the same benefit worded two different ways. You get, to multiply your healing by that 15%, and then whatever that final number is, you multiply that again by another 1.2. So this can increase a character's healing output by a rather substantial amount. The problem with this set on most characters is that they either heal nowhere near enough, for this to be meaningful, like Xingqiu. Let's not talk about why he has it right now. Or they heal enough already. It really would have to be a character that was kind of on the fence about the amount of healing output they produced. Because if they heal a lot already, you can use Ocean-Hued Clam, which turns the healing into damage. It doesn't even lose you the healing, it just for all the healing you get, it becomes damage. Even if it's more healing than you actually need. So on a lot of characters that actually heal a lot, I would rather have this. On Lisa, if you considered her to be just on the edge, then this could be, Maiden Beloved could be what pushes it over. Yeah, it does go in on the healing support a good bit. I feel like it's worth noting here that if what you're trying to do with your artifacts and your weapons is add supportive benefits, you have added only one complete supportive benefit, although it's a big thing, being a healer, with both your weapon and your artifact set. Whereas if you were, I don't necessarily think this is a good idea. I know Asymptomatic isn't going to like this idea. In fact, you probably know what I'm going to say. If you ran something like Instructor and, Hakshin Ring, you'd be providing two sources of damage increase to the team with those two slots. And she wouldn't be doing the job of being a healer. I'm just saying I feel like the power budget of that setup, it feels a little higher. It's like you got more overall power out of those two slots. It feels like a lot to need to increase the healing of Prototype Amber with the set bonus from Maiden Beloved. Yeah, I guess it's not competing with much. You know, if you're not going to do Emblem of Severed Fate, is it really competing with that much? Um, while we're here, you can note the character doesn't actually have to heal at all to trigger Maiden Beloved. It just makes the team get more healing. You know, they won't get the two-piece bonus if they don't provide any healing, but um, are healing bonus and healing received simply added? Anyway, it's a lot of healing increase, but exactly how they multiply is unclear. I agree that I should be less cavalier about saying things probably are different multipliers because Genshin Impact's wording is notoriously unclear. It frequently things have been just kind of translated. Remember, this is translated from the Chinese, and so a lot of the time the wording or like the it's usually word order that's weird in my opinion. The localization team are not the developers, you know what I mean? And so it is being written by someone who didn't design the function of the effect, which like is no harm no foul. Localization team, localization is hard, but it's harder to get it right when it's not the person who wrote the effect. And to be fair, a lot of the effects are kind of weird. So yeah, I think it's good that you pointed that out. It's possible that doesn't work that way. I want to talk about Lisa as a healer on the team I've been showing you. I guess I'll flag this section like other ideas slash team building. So it's this team. Now, previously, I had it like this. I would much rather have Yelan here. And then Lisa can provide a little bit of healing. Now, the main point of this team is really Hu Tao. Hu Tao gains a pretty substantial damage increase from being at low health, less than 50% health. So there's a conundrum. I want health, like I don't want to die, but I don't want to heal her that much. The two things you can do are kind of either get a shield or get a life, get a healer that heals a very controlled amount. Now, because Lisa with Prototype Amber, just Prototype Amber, heals you for, you know, so it's 60% every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. You heal for, I forget how many ticks, but like 18 to 24%, right? Which is like a fourth of your health, give or take, which is kind of perfect. You know, if Huta's below 50% health, that means she's likely still below 50% health. She can take some, it's significant healing, but she can take some damage and then it will save her. So it does the job. And the reason I want it to be an electro character is because I want the uh, overload electrocharged, you know, the extra free reaction damage. And Lisa provides a defense shred from her burst. This, I think, is particularly elegant because this team is not very likely to easily get Viridis and Venerer on the effects that it wants. Let me show you what I mean. So you could do something like this. I want Sayu to swirl Pyro, but the way that Hu Tao is going to apply the Pyro, it might be a little awkward to do that, especially consistently. You know, I'm only going to have for 10 seconds, that's not that bad. But, you know, I would have to open with Hu Tao, hit them, and then waste the duration of this effect to swirl that before bombarding them with Hydro. And the team purposefully has way more Hydro output, right? Whereas the other way, when I was using Lisa, I give up on the Viridis and Venerer multiplier, but I get a damage increase, that defense reduction that affects all of the team's damage, even though it's 3 different elements, which is elegant. Like, that's why I liked that. You could run Hu Tao and someone like Toma for Pyro Swirls. Hu Tao, Toma, and then the Animo unit in place of like Yelan here, for example. You could. I don't want to get too caught up in this theme specifically, but I think you lose a lot by not having the extra Hydro, and you also gain a pretty big benefit from Soothing Water. Hu Tao and Yelan both gain a lot from that. So it's just not ideal, that's all. I feel like the benefit of Lisa here is almost limited to the defense shred. So I am inclined to run someone like Dory. I think that if you're going to consider running healing that strongly, it makes sense as prudent to compare to the existing characters that offer healing for Electro. And Electro, at the time of this recording, is lucky to have two options, first party options, before you use Prototype Amber. Dory, who I find does a pretty effective sort of upfront damage if you want that, and Shinobu, who does excellent elemental reaction output, like enabling hyperblooms and stuff. Basically just for hyperbloom teams, but that's still good. Those are good. So Lisa feels awkward in there. You know, in the use case I'm using her here, it kind of feels like Dory more or less fulfills the same goal. Or maybe a Dendro unit. You know, Hu Tao could maybe be getting some Burgeon output. Maybe. I would have to try that. But I think the trick is that I wanted kind of a modest healer and also a unit that boosts the team's damage. But we've talked a lot during this stream about Lisa as a healer, which maybe isn't that helpful because that's only one way you might build her. So let's get some other people's Lisa stuff going. Earlier, Vamper, you said you sure could bring Lisa official Dendro stuff. You could do that. Let's look at that. Something like this, maybe. This team gives Catalyze, and I do think that Lisa, with this build I've suggested with Emblem and that spread of stats, does make sense as a Catalyze unit. She's got a modest amount of all of the relevant damage stats, which mathematically makes sense for Catalyze. So that's cool. Let's just look at the actual damage from Catalyze increasing damage. So you can see that because the damage from Catalyze is just a it's just an increase to the attack's base output, it should be good with attacks that hit rapidly, like Lisa's burst. But I found the damage was modest. She has only modest elemental mastery, she has only modest attack. She's being pulled in a lot of directions that way. But yeah, she applies a lot of Electro for the team, and she provides the team another multiplier. You know, going back to our example before where we were comparing the benefit of getting this defense reduction to the benefit of using Viridis and Venerer, well, you can't swirl Dendro. So this is a way that you could give that team a multiplier that it can't have otherwise. You cannot give these teams Viridis and Venerer's damage increase, not the Dendro part of the team anyway. So maybe Lisa feels good on teams like this for boosting Dendro unit damage. So for example, I have a version of this team that is Electro focused. You maintain Catalyze all the time. It's kind of the same kind of team, but it's focused on Electro. Fischl is really good because Fischl has a passive that gives you an extra whack of damage anytime your active character does an Electro reaction, and when enemies have Catalyze on them, merely hitting them with something that applies Electro counts as an Electro reaction. That's how the game gives you the damage bonus. So that's a lot of damage. No such synergy here. So I also think Fischl isn't particularly good here, but that doesn't really matter. We could just use Beto. Or Fischl's still fine, she just doesn't have that benefit. You could use Dory as well, sure. But Lisa might provide a more unique benefit there, whereas on a team like this, I'd argue you really sacrifice readily available, very strong Electro supports, like Fischl. I also don't think Beto is so bad on this team. She has interesting synergy with Nahida. And this team doesn't really hurt for the damage increase that much because you can swirl Electro to get the damage out of it. So adding an Animo healer more obviously benefits this team. Whereas this team, yeah, it does feel like this is a benefit you don't as easily come by. You know, what else is going to increase this team's damage besides, you know, you could buff their attack and stuff, of course. Sure. So I'd probably look at Lisa, Fischl, Nahida, Sayu. Interesting. With Nahida as the primary applicator. Or is it Lisa? I've heard of people using Lisa as the attacker enabling damage on catalyzed teams. I don't know. I mean, mine is not going to be a great example for that because she just isn't built all ways. Her attack is really low, for example. But we can look at what that gameplay would look like, if you like. I do feel it's important to note that making a team like this on my account, it is deceiving because my Sayu and especially Nahida are very heavily invested, so it's gonna be good anyway, right? In these examples, you really shouldn't consider very much whether the team looks like it's doing good damage. That doesn't matter because that's dependent on my account and how my characters are built. That's really just true in every game that we would do this in. That's always been true. But in particular here, you would look more at the rotation, like what is the gameplay quality of life experience of rotating through these characters. So let's give it a try. Sure. Accept all these bounties too. And actually, let's do the, oh, we can do this first, it's fine. So remember, Catalyze will increase the base damage of attacks that hit while it's up. So we'll tag everyone, or miss one of them, but that's fine. Set up the buffs and stuff. And then try to do some big damage. And you can see there are some hits of big damage in here, boosted by her, boosted by Aggravate, boosted by the Dendro Electro Catalyze buff. Not bad. And Lisa herself achieved nice numbers. Just note that you would have gotten that with pretty much any Electro character. I don't think this is something unique to Lisa, but it doesn't need to be. I feel it's meaningful to look at some combination like putting Kale in this slot, for example, who's also free as part of the tutorial process just later on. And then you could make a decent Catalyze team for free. Pretty easy to use, hopefully. Catalyze theme with whatever other, you know, units you happened to have. Let's just play that version a little bit. Slightly less invested Dendro unit, but she'll still do more than enough, you know, it's fine. And I also want to talk about grouping people. I kind of don't want Sayu. I wanted to talk about that. Ow. Butts. It's nice to have the character have Electro innately, so I could just zap enemies. But you can see that when it doesn't trigger Catalyze, her damage is quite low. Very, very low. So you want to weave in charge attacks, but Lisa's charge attacks are quite expensive. They cost a lot of energy. They're slow. So it's fine. And do note, again, that was not bad damage for my Lisa having basically no attack, right? She's not really built for that type of team. She almost completely lacks any attack. Not bad. Really not bad. Just that I don't think that Lisa is a good choice, really, for these teams. There's really nothing she's doing that makes her good for these teams. She's just free and works for them. That's my whole thing. Now, that being said, I think you could make this team a little more Lisa-y, and let's do that. Make the healer be Electro, so I'll just use Dori. And I suppose they don't need to be Electro, do they? We don't really need more Electro. If Lisa's going to be the one on the field, we've got enough Electro. Dendro here, and then I'm going to add enemy grouping with Sucrose, also an Elemental Mastery support. And what the heck, we'll use Dendro healing too. Something like that. Let's go fight. What can we fight? Let's fight these two guys. Kazuha, but I'm wary when demonstrating things here of overshadowing the character we're demonstrating with a character that is just ridiculously strong anyway, you know? That's why I'm avoiding Kazuha. Just instantly died, but that's fine. Everyone's horribly dying, but it's fine. What I was trying to show that this actually doesn't very carefully demonstrate is the idea that you could group enemies up for Lisa's burst, and that could be powerful. It could be easier to get value out of that effect if you did a fight that wasn't this and is killing all my characters because this theme is bad. But the idea is lots of smaller units. You could have something that pulls them into Lisa's burst. Venti, I guess, would be the obvious example. Venti's burst should yank enemies in there pretty good. And Lisa's burst hits a decent vertical height, so you'll still hit them if they're sucked in like that. I could sort of take her leave yeah here too, but she gives elemental mastery. That's a thing, because you get Dendro resonance. Anyway, I'll faff around and try to demonstrate that a little better, because I think it's a good idea. And I do feel like Lisa is broadly stronger if you can sort of keep enemies in her burst. Maybe not so bad at killing a bunch of medium-sized enemies if you can get them to be in it. If you can get them in her burst. So finding a way to do that seems kind of meaningful. I just need to find people to do that too. And while I do that, Ace, you said, somewhat abstractly, I do want to draw attention to what Lisa is outside of what she does. An 80 cost burst does contribute to weapons and other characters who listen for the party's total burst cost. The Raiden Shogun via Chakra Desiderata, and the Inazuma exclusive rollables, Muon's Moon, Wavebreaker's Fin, those care how big a character's bursts are. So the mere fact that she has a large burst, of an 80 cost burst, could be what, you know, pushes you over to her being useful. Anyway, we don't need to find a group of enemies, but you could see, you know, Venti's burst pulling things together would be a good way to use Lisa's burst. Yeah, no, we'll find a group of enemies, it's fine. Yeah, Ace, that's, while a small thing, it could be the thing that makes you pick Lisa over someone else, sure. Her burst has a long duration. Another related thing that I think is a little more likely to come up for some people is the idea that Lisa's burst is, she's pretty hands-off, you know, you just do her burst and that's pretty much all she's got anyway. So you lose nothing by not swapping back to her sooner. If you stay off her for, you know, 15-20 seconds, she hasn't got anything else anyway, so keeping them from watering out or getting knocked out or anything. Yeah, absolutely. You could, like on that team I showed before with Hu Tao, one of the benefits of her burst being long and having a long cooldown is I'm not going to swap back to her anyway until then. I need to do my Xingqiu, Yelan, Lisa, and then Hu Tao's just going to attack for a while. And then I'll loop back around, reload Xingqiu's burst, reload Yelan's burst, and by that time, Lisa's burst is off cooldown. I wouldn't have wanted to swap back to her sooner. So the fact that her burst is a long cooldown can have a lot of team building implications, right? It might not be that powerful, but you get the value for relatively little field time, and it does provide a fairly unique benefit. So, yeah, good stuff. No, I guess not. Yeah, anyway. Let's not fight those guys again. So besides that, I had an example of this theme where I was demonstrating how that defense reduction could be a unique way to increase a colorful variety of characters' damage. This team, which is an example of using her for Catalyze, Dendro Electro, and you could possibly make that better by pulling enemies into her burst, or by swirling so that the electro damage boosted by Catalyze is also boosted by Viridis and Venerer. Anything else immediately come to mind? Overloaded, I probably wouldn't, and I don't think you'd be happy if you did, because her burst will throw enemies to the moon, and having enemies be far apart and not in her burst is not beneficial in any way. So that's bad. Maybe don't do that. Juke from the boy over there. Trying to actually do the stuff we were talking about. Yeah, I mean, noting that she isn't really built for this type of team, it's not bad. I don't have a lot of complaints. Not too uncomfortable to play either, like there's nothing that really demands precise swapping or anything. Well, I do worry that this team is kind of backed up by Venti a little bit too much, but this environment, I guess this fight isn't very Venti focused. There's not tons of enemies, so I guess it's fine. Lisa's gonna die, but it's fine. Kale maybe doesn't have like the most Dendro application that I'd want, but Catalyze does last a while, so when you make a team like this, it often isn't too bad if you don't apply that much Dendro or Electro. That's one of the benefits of Catalyze as a reaction. You don't have to worry so much about that. Lisa applies a good amount of Electro. You've got her normal attack, her charge attack, her tap skill, and her burst. So a lot of different ways that you can do pretty frequently. Are we in a gambling mood with the Wood Sith? Well, give me... Okay, so I mean, we did a discussion, the aim of which was to be useful, and a discussion, the purpose of which was, you know, to get our bearings. We can now do a discussion that is just memes. Absolutely. Or just not necessarily memes, but things that I don't agree are good at all, but I'm just going to write Buck Wild in the show notes. Sure. Why? Why do you want this? Why, oh why? I mean, the Wood Sith is a perfectly great weapon. I think that my issue with it is the elemental mastery feels like you seem better really want, and that's a lot of elemental mastery too, you know? Ace, you said, I broadly think Lisa falls short of being a face character on the field. She can only ever play a supporting role in my library. Haha, cause boo. Librarian. She's the librarian. Lisa is a cherished member of the Single Packet Association with her skill, but comes with the mental overhead of tracking stacks and the long cooldown. Indeed, if you want to do big bongo electro damage, you can in fact make the big bongo electro team, which is, I guess, the Raiden Shogun, Sada, friggin' Lisa, show yourself. There we go. She's like, don't include me. And actually, yeah, probably Sayu. An Animo healer to apply Viridis and Venerer so that all of this electro damage does more damage. Definitely gonna want to shred electro resistance on this team. Otherwise, they're going to lose out on a lot of damage. Sure. Let's indulge ourselves, shall we? Now, I didn't put on the Wood Sith, but that would be like the final piece, just to push the limits of and an attack buff character, which this team actually kind of wants. Being real, that is what I would actually pick if I wanted Lisa to do more damage. You saw in the build that we got kind of shoehorned into to get her energy recharge to do the thing. You were really, really desperate for having enough attack. The build had like no sources of attack, and you can see with Sada's buff, my Sada is very invested, but like totally fine attack, very balanced with her other stats now. After their character equipped with this triggers an elemental reaction, they have to trigger the reaction. They can't just be part of the reaction. So in this team, you don't get the benefit from this because Swirl has to be triggered by Animo. That's awkward. But what are you going to do? Yeah, totally, the Widsith. You swap to it, get the damage increase, and just cut enemies in half, sure. Why not? So yeah, you could totally do this. If you want that big bongo single packet electro damage, Sada's C6 would like to know your location, but I don't want that. So I'm glad you brought it up, because otherwise we wouldn't have talked about it. I don't know. Unfortunately, I think Lisa's skill is bad and should feel bad, but if it was fast, it would probably be good. And I also feel like it's really propped up by Pulsating Witch. You said it comes with the mental overhead of tracking stacks and the long cooldown. You said it. Like, needing to get the stacks is just not, that's too much. It's not enough of a benefit for that, you know? If you get the stacks, then at least when you do it because you have to get particles, you get big damage. I don't know. So I don't know, this constellation is kind of propping up her effectiveness. Weirdly, I feel like that Constellation 6, that last constellation, is probably the minimum I would want for Lisa to feel like she did the thing. I didn't really use Lisa that much until I had that, and then I started to feel like it was maybe okay. What else can we make? I don't know. It's not a bad start to the series, though, to have as one of our freebies. Should we do fashion? We could do fashion. You get any more meme teams, chat? We can talk about meme teams. I mean, this isn't even really that much of a meme team, but like things that you like about Lisa but that haven't gotten talked about. Let's say it that way. Actually, I'm not interested at all in literally completely pointless meme teams, but if we can discuss them, then there you go. Is it even a meme? If it's on the Zandy stream. Yeah. So I don't know, not bad. Like that's not a bad experience. Dry Hallmark, thanks for the follow. Welcome aboard. How you doing? Welcome to the tail end of our stream about Lisa. We have accomplished some things. I've kind of reaffirmed my interest in Hakshin Ring, but I mentioned that I think Lisa is a character that Prototype Amber is kind of looking at a little bit. The idea that Lisa would add a little more utility to your team than literally just removing enemy defense and applying decent electro and damage with her burst has always appealed to me, and I think that Amber is a good way to do that. But Hakshin Ring is a good way too, and it may be, oh boy. If you try to deceive people into thinking you're a real person and then advertising to them, you are an asshole. Dry Hallmark was a spammer. So they got banned for spamming their view bot in chat. Surprising no one, I do not want to purchase followers. That's my secret captain. I already have followers. Also, I don't want people that, well, I mean, you can lurk and that's fine, but I don't know. I don't want a large numerical audience. That's kind of the whole thing. Anyway, yeah, I guess I have a closing thought, and it's about this Prototype Amber thing. So let's do that. And then we could just do like loose play. We talked a lot about Prototype Amber in this stream. And I want to go back to Vampire. You said, I do already have Prototype Amber on my Yanfei, and I haven't found a use for a different electro healing than Kuki and Dori. Indeed, I think that Shinobu and Dori really do the job. I don't think there's really a need to have a third electro healer. On this team, Lisa does provide some unique benefits where I don't think Dory and Shinobu really have a robust contribution. But is that worth taking Prototype Amber, which, if you're the average player, you probably only have one of these? Uh, you have to commit this to a character or move it around constantly, which I'm assuming you won't bother doing. Um, is that really a good enough use case? I would kind of agree, Vamper. Um, in that specific team, it has its various benefits, but yeah, there are a lot of characters who this benefits you quite highly on if you don't put it on Lisa. In particular, Yep Yanfei is one that comes to mind. Um, I have had good experiences with Heizo and Ningguang, two characters that can really spam Prototype Amber's effect because they have short cooldown bursts that are easy to keep active. Um, and for the part of the benefit of this that gives Lisa energy, you do have other options. I mean, you can use Favonius Codex. I'm kind of interested in the Sac Frags, Lisa. Sac Frags. You can do her burst twice. Now, that's bad because it takes forever, but it's good because it does big damage. So that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, the point is, if you really wanted, the energy out of this, there you have other options. Favonius Codex is the actual other option. And if you want the healing out of it, I do feel if you own Shinobu and or Dory, most teams would be as happy, if not happier, with those units, just because they require less maintenance. Like they just get the thing, they do the healing faster, and then they're still gonna apply electro to people. So I agree. That's kind of why I'm my goal for this stream personally, because besides just entertaining you all, I want you know it to be interesting for me. Was to get myself off Prototype Amber, and I had little difficulty doing that. I'm pretty sold on Hakshin Ring. I think having that damage percent buff, which is also kind of rare, like a damage increase is also a bit of a rarer damage increase, positions Lisa as a specialist where you can add Electro to your team. She provides a good amount of Electro output, and you're adding unusual, hard to get damage buffs. That defense shred and the damage percentage increase. 20% is modest, but again, that it's uncommon to boost that value. So this gives energy recharge too. It makes her attack at base a little more respectable, I guess. It's not the end of the world either way, but yeah. So I don't know. I think that's neat. The sack frags thing wasn't a complete meme. Like I've heard worse ideas. I don't know. Thrilling Tales. Ace, you said Thrilling Tales also looms in the corner, but that's really kicking the ladder out from under Lisa. Indeed, there's a lot of characters sweating for this stupid book. Mostly Barbara would like to say hello. Another free character that uses a catalyst, and actually I think is interested in Prototype Amber too. But anyway, Thrilling Tales. Yeah, this also really hurts her chances of doing meaningful personal damage because you lose a lot of base attack that Lisa cares about if you're gonna do, again, any meaningful personal damage. So this is fine. Like any catalyst user, this is obviously fine. And another benefit of Thrilling Tales is that you absolutely can quite easily acquire multiple of these at Refine 5. I generally make these videos with the assumption that you have one of a weapon at most. I think that that's mostly the situation on the ground. Even for the 3-star weapons, not that many of which are really that competing for space, but there are the occasional good 3-star weapons. You could get multiple of these at Refine 5. By rolling, you get loads of them, but you probably wouldn't level them up, So I do think it's a reasonable assumption, lacking anything better, to say you have one of each of them. But yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I don't think Prototype Amber or Thrilling Tales are at all bad choices, but I just don't know if I would put them on Lisa. You might be a player who'd swap them around, but I know most people don't. So yeah, I kind of like Hakshin Ring. I think Bionic Me was talking about using 4-piece Petra. What the hell? Sure. That's weird. Let's look at that. Another supportive effect. We could maybe even talk about Exile, but anyway. Let's look at Petra. Geo damage, which doesn't apply to her, but if she obtains an elemental shard created by a crystallized reaction, party members get a 35% damage bonus based on what element the shard is. She doesn't have to make the shards, so you put her in a team with other Geo units, and I would almost feel like that's the problem right there. It's like with who? Zhongli, I guess. That would be very specific, but not the worst idea. Again, at this point, we're basically just going through every single thing that can give her a supportive effect on her kit. In that vein, I also want to talk about something I don't think is a good idea, but which gives you a supportive effect, which is Exile. You have to sacrifice her personal damage even more, which pretty much all of these things are doing actually, so it's fine. You keep the energy recharge, and she charges the team's energy by a bit. This isn't always as bad as it seems. It's not as bad as it seems, excuse me, because when a character builds Exile, they get to have one piece at 5-star rarity. You can have an off piece still. And if that's your crown or cup, well, that was a lot of the damage that you would have gotten by running 5-star artifacts. The energy recharge, yeah, you lose some, but not the end of the world. And then the base attack, like you lose a little, but it's not so much lower. It's not a huge difference. So I don't think that Exile is a nonsensical choice. I brought up Instructor earlier, and that's also like it's not crazy to do that. But I don't think it's that great. Otherworldly Story, Lisa. Final answer. Is that a weapon? Why does that sound familiar? Yes, Everlasting Moon Glow. Yeah, I mean, obviously we could get into some other supportive weapons, like 1,000 Floating Dreams gives the team 40 elemental mastery. I don't know if I want this on Lisa, and I feel like the large pile of elemental mastery is a bit wasted. I broadly just think this unit, maybe Hakshin Ring is a good fit because I'm just not looking for it on anyone else is the biggest thing. That's what feels better. High Perception is cute. You get Chain Lightning. It's purple. I don't know. But I wanted to mention the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about this entire time, which is, dare I say it, noblesse. Mystic Swordsman, welcome back. How you doing? I remember you from Drift Frame way back, and now I'm kind of surprised that you play Genshin Impact too. Yeah, I mean, I'm up for pretty much anything that I feel like has interesting build systems, and I think that Warframe and Genshin Impact both have really noteworthy, interesting build systems. I'm not really that interested in streaming anyway anything else about Genshin Impact. We don't. I don't condone like hyped up rolling streams. That's bad. That's legitimately actually harmful. So that's bad. We don't do that. Very occasionally I'll roll on the stream, but only when it's deterministic. And I am a very hardcore person about boundaries with rolling, so it would only ever be like I'm going to roll exactly this amount and no more. We're not going to do the story on the stream. That isn't useful, in my opinion. I love enjoying the story by myself. We often don't do updates on the stream. We almost exclusively just talk about builds. That's the same thing with Warframe, right? Like a lot of my Warframe streams don't have any gameplay. We just talk about builds the whole time. So in that sense, it's the same thing. But as long as that sounds interesting to you, if you were interested in the why of picking each frame in Drift Frame, the why this frame, how to make this frame fast, that kind of stuff, that to me was what I was interested in. The main reason that I haven't made more Drift Frame, Warframe stuff, is because it has become meaningless what specific frame you use for the most part. you can use invigorations and the helmet system, pretty much just the helmet system, which I otherwise really enjoy, but it makes drift frame kind of pointless. You can just use any frame as the fastest frame, you know? But anyway, not to say there's anything wrong with it. There's not really anything else for me to say as a creator about it. But I'm glad you've been enjoying drift frame over the years. I hope you'll enjoy the streams. We stream this time every Monday. I'd love to have you back sometime. We're toward the tail end of the stream today, but we still have another half hour or so. And on Thursdays, we generally stream Warframe build discussion. Paraxel, you said, I notice you rarely touch on Spiral Abyss as well. That's true. That being said, it's only true nominally. Most of the information that we go over in these streams is mostly useful in Spiral Abyss. In a way, it's a real flaw of the way I stream Genshin Impact that that we don't do more Spiral Abyss, because you're right, I don't like talk about Spiral Abyss by name that often, but most of the build discussion and advice that we give in this stream is primarily useful for like the ease of Spiral Abyssing, because that's just the more challenging thing available in the game right now. Yeah, you can use it to get weeklies and weekly bosses and stuff and world bosses done faster. You can use it to get events done faster. Of course, of course. But the staple thing that it makes it easier to do is Spiral Abyss. I use this theme all the time in Spiral Abyss, like clockwork. It is very difficult to show examples of stuff like that without them being really artificial. Like, I could go into Spiral Abyss and confabulate a situation where if we pretend I don't have these characters on my account and I make Lisa's build something totally different, then you could use her here. But that would require more time than this entire stream, and I don't think it's really worth it. That's my opinion. I feel like for individual characters, doing a fight that is like the weekly bosses do the job of demonstrating the build with, yeah, like less difficulty than Spiral Abyss, but you would do the exact same thing. It would just take more damage in Spiral Abyss, you know. So I'm not going to do that for individual characters. I don't think it's worth the time. Actually doing Spiral Abyss on the stream, maybe. To be honest, I think it's a self-consciousness problem on my end. Like, I beat myself up if it isn't good enough or something, you know? And that's just an I need to get over myself thing. So absolutely, we have occasionally done a little Spiral Abyss on the stream, and I think it's a good exercise. Paraxel, you said, could you do Spiral Abyss on stream and then revolve build discussions around trying to solve it? Sure. Again, I think that for an advanced account, it doesn't matter until floor 11, really. You can steamroll floors 9 and 10 pretty consistently, and my experience has been that you actually lose time making a team that does even more damage over just using the team you know will do enough damage. Which is not to say there's anything wrong with just making a team for fun. It's just to say I don't think that's actually useful. Since we've been showing a lot of catalyzed teams, I wanted to quickly show the one I actually like, because it's a lot better, and just to show the gain in performance you'd get. Big Spoon, you said, does Candace ult boost all elemental normal attacks? It boosts all damage, elemental damage, dealt by normal attacks. It only does a Hydro Infusion for Sword, Claymore, and Polearm, but all normal attacks that do elemental damage do more damage. Now, I would like to note for you that it is only 20% and it is not increased by level. I don't think that's that meaningful. But it's a lot more meaningful if you have Candace's C6, which applies a lot more Hydro during that time. And I will almost certainly acquire this during the next banner. So we'll hold that thought. I mean, well, you do whatever you want with that thought right now, but I'm just saying I may be revisiting that soon. Like for Warframe, we will generally be doing the Genshin Impact Build Lab streams, once every 2 weeks or so as a rule. So in other words, it's not like next week we're going to do another one, next week we're going to do another one. We'll generally take a break between weeks. I'd also like to note that when a new character comes out, we're not going to do them right away. That is not a good practice. It comes from people being obsessed with views and news media, and that is not what we do here. It makes the advice worse. I want to talk about new characters when they come out, but that shouldn't be when we put pen to paper, as per se, and like commit to the page information about the character. Absolutely not, in my opinion. There are a lot of characters that I've massively changed my mind about after having them for longer, for example. So next week, when Kaveh and Baiju come out, we're going to talk about them and hang out and have fun with them, but we're not going to do like Kaveh's version of this stream, right? That it just isn't soon enough. It's not long enough, excuse me, after Kaveh's come out for that to be productive. Do I want to do that? Yeah, absolutely. But it would just be better not to. There's so many characters for us to do, and at this rate we'll barely ever catch up anyway. There's just no reason to do the character right when they come out, except getting a bunch of views, which, like, if I wanted that, I would do my entire career differently. If that was our focus here, we wouldn't be doing this right now. Because the best way to get like a lot of videos, if that's what you wanted, out of this type of content would be to split it up, right? You could do a whole video about each of the Lisa approaches that I just talked about. There you go. There's a bunch of ideas right there, I guess. But that would be less useful, I think. Also, a lot of them are not that worthy of note. It's just like, sure, we can try this. Anyway, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, so maybe there's no point, but... that one guy sitting down had a bad time. Anyway. So the Candace thing is an interesting idea. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with Electrocharge these days. That's kind of a separate thing. Let's look at the Candace Lisa thing. I guess with Lisa intending to attack a lot of the time. Like Animo, I guess, and just a lot of double Animo. How about that? Yeah, you sure can do Sucrose Electrocharge nonsense, right? My main problem with Electrocharged is that the reaction ownership is kind of weird, and the damage isn't super high in my experience. I also think that Dendro broadly kind of eats the lunch of just using Electrocharge. Like, you lose a lot by not also doing Dendro reactions or not also doing the Hydro, Pyro Electro thing I was doing before. Like, if this team is Electrocharged, adding Dendro would add a ton of reaction damage, and adding Pyro adds a ton of reaction damage. The main strong point of Electrocharged, I think, is that the enemy maintains both elements. You can swirl both elements and get the Viridis and Venerer damage boost for both elements. And if your team has broad team-wide elemental mastery buffs, it's not a bad way to take advantage of those, which a lot of the best elemental mastery supportive characters just do anyway. You know, for example, Sucrose, when she provides the team elemental mastery, she gives it to everyone, so you lose nothing by having a team that, you know, you couldn't have gotten more by focusing it. You see what I mean? It's not like you would have gotten more elemental mastery out of this team slot if you only buffed one character. Sucrose gives broadly the most, and she gives it to everyone, so... yeah, it's good against a bunch of very small enemies, and like floor 9 and 10 Spiral Abyss, I sometimes find Electrocharged useful. That can be really good. The Sucrose Fischl thing is still as good as it always was, too. That's kind of a story for another time. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. You could play this team a little. I think that Candace's C6 would help his team a lot, because you get more Hydro application. Ace, you said Electric Charge seems mildly more interesting to me with Dendro in the game, though I still bounce off both. Why? What about, to me, well, maybe it's more interesting, but mostly because I want the Dendro reactions and Electric Charge might just happen anyway. I don't know. But why? Tell me more. Oh, don't mind if I do. So Big Spoon, to get back to your question a little bit late, that's like really all I have to say about that personally, but ah yes, Hossein's Har Fruits. Hope I'm pronouncing that kind of okay. Oh right, yeah, if you want one single big hit of damage, Electric Charge is just bad. Okay, well, that's oof. Yeah. I love the game trope of chain lightning effects, so I've always really liked Electrocharged. But at the moment, I feel like it's there's not much reason to have it stand alone in Genshin Impact. There's not really a reason not to do more, is all. And that's, I guess that's just the kind of player I am. Take my fruits, fine. Yeah, Big Spoon. I feel the same way. I really like Candace. So, like, if we did a Candace video, I would probably say I think that Candace is kind of wonk. The problem with Candace, in a nutshell, in my opinion, is that her burst relies on benefiting a thing that Genshin Impact is basically designed to have be bad. When you have the option to fill all of your rotation time with skills and bursts, normal attacking is usually the last thing you want to be doing. And Candace doesn't boost it by enough for it to be worth. Like, even if you boosted normal attack damage by a ton, it would still be counterbalanced by the opportunity cost of normal attacking is so high in a game where you could be doing skills and bursts and charge attacks and stuff. But Candace doesn't even boost it by that much. That, to me, that's the biggest problem. I think from a game design perspective, Candace should be much more powerful than she is, and she still wouldn't be very good. It would just be more fair from a design perspective. You could look at it a different way. You could say that the problem with Candace is actually that the other competing Hydra support units are overpowered. And that's true also, although I don't think it changes the problem. From a game design perspective, this ability is built around making something better that is not good in Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is designed in a way where it would be very difficult for normal attacking a lot to be very strong. But that doesn't mean there are no exceptions. And separately, it doesn't make her look better when you have units like Yelan and Xingqiu there. I think it would be interesting to consider something like Candace's C6, which is basically just a slower Yelan or Xingqiu burst. It applies Hydro just constantly during her burst, but slower than those characters do. And you don't have to. No, you do have to. You still have to normal attack, but it does it slower than they do it. That's still good. Just if you have the alternatives, I don't think I would ever choose that over them. You know, I have been thinking about when I get Candace's C6, would I rather go back to that other team and swap Xingqiu for Candace, because they Yelan and Candace both scale with HP, and this team has the resonance, and then Hu Tao. And do we need that much Hydro? But I'm not sure. And Candace's C6 is AoE, right? And indeed, like, just Candace's stuff in general, like, it hits a decent area. You get the pulses on demand from swapping using her burst. It's not like she has no advantages. I just think that they're not very robust compared to the competition. I don't know. You know, Electrocharged doesn't feel like a bad place for that, I guess, because you don't need that much Hydro, I suppose. So I don't know. It's not a terrible idea here. But Xingqiu's damage reduction is too good. It is really good with Hu Tao to have that damage reduction. That's right. That's true. So yeah, I don't know. To not focus too much on Candace in a stream that's meant to be about Lisa, but we can absolutely talk about characters on the side, and it feels pretty related to. Uh, oh no, the Lisa situation. Oh my goodness, no! Why? Why would you do that? Oh, Genshin Impact. This is the worst thing. I'm gonna mute the audio and spam through it. Oh, why do they do this? Cutscene landmine. Man, this is the worst thing about streaming this game. You have to finish all of everything, or you might randomly teleport into an unskippable cutscene for 15 minutes. Um, so even if I was interested in this part of the story, I won't listen to it now because I can't. I'm doing something else. You might say that's a job specific to people streaming, but y'all have lives too. Uh, so it's not like it only affects me. Anyway. Vampire, you said I tried a Candace Nahida Shinobu Layla team, which I found fun but would want C6 Candace for. That team does hyper bloom stuff, obviously, but it keeps enemies frozen, allows Candace to shatter sometimes, and because all three characters who aren't Candace need really, really low upkeep, you can fully charge Candace's skill every time with no problem. Interesting. Let's take a look. Big Spoon, you said, I really do despise the visual novel half of this game. I love the combat systems, though. Yeah, like, it's interesting to hear you word it that way. I'm really interested in the story as per se, like what's actually happening, but the story, the things the game calls the story don't often pertain to the parts I'm like that matter, to be blunt. Um I think the event stories are often fine, but they're too long and you can't skip them. That's often how I feel. Like I'm actually okay with what actually happens in the story, like that's fine, but not being able to skip them doesn't respect the player's time. That's frustrating. Um, and the fluff is just longer than it needs to be, in my opinion. I feel like if it's done for padding, when you break down the amount of time it pads, it's just not enough for that to be a good reason. Oh, right, we were trying to turn in that one quest. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, Big Spoon, personally, I think that the way the story is told is actually a way bigger problem than the actual content of the story. It's not for lack of me being interested in what's happening. It's because of the way it's delivered slash the way it doesn't respect my time by locking me into a cutscene when I don't want to. Um, So I don't know. The thing that broke me was when I learned that this developer's previous game does allow you to do many of the things that we complain about. So it's not as if they like don't want to let the player skip things. Like their own game does also have that thing. So maybe they feel differently about it here, but I just think that's frustrating. Um, there's lots of things in this topic. Proaxel, you said don't unlock character story quests until you're actually going to play them, except that the game punishes you for not doing that with keys. It's not a big deal if you're caught up, but the game does kind of say like, oh, you should claim your key and then unlock a new quest. But also don't do that because you'll be trapped in an unskippable cutscene. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's easy to get enough keys. Yeah, we all know. But at the same time, why? Why do they do that? Just make the game different. The thing I always insist in situations like this is like, look, the developer is God. Like this is their game. Like they can make it not be like that if they wanted to. They might not have the time. That's a different thing. This NPC is busy completing other quests. That one is just crazy. Yeah. I don't know. But there can be any number of reasons. It can be a lack of time. It can be a spaghetti code issue. So I always feel bad criticizing these things too much because they're like 50% of the time it's something they can't do anything about for some reason. And so it's like, what's even the point of? I mean, we can complain just to vent our frustrations, though, right? So, anyway, thank you, Candace, for that timely block. What I was going to do is look at that team Vampire mentioned, and then we'll be winding down. We'll have to go. Candice, Nahida, Shinobu, Layla. Oh, like a fridging team. Interesting. Yeah, we'll get back to that when we do Kave. Um, I'm really excited about that. I think the fridging thing is going to be pretty interesting. The act of like stretching the elements on enemies when playing around with uh Dendro by using its interaction with cryo and freeze. We'll show you. I'm pretty excited about the implications with Kave. And I think that fridging is a specific enough thing that using the terminology is useful. I frequently come out very strongly against asymptomatics' oh no, abstract terminology. Against like people call it's common to call a team that does the thing that my Lisa Hutao team does. That's often called like overvape or taser or something. Taser is often used to mean like four different things. Overvape, for example. Yeah, it's overload and vaporize. Yeah, but like there's no reason you can't just explain it. Like that, the elephant in the room here is like, we're not writing a scientific literature journal where everybody knows all the terminology because you could create a deadly explosion if you don't. And you need to save the number of like pages in the report you're writing because the scientific journals want you to like cut out commas because it takes up too much space. Yes, that's a real thing. Or it was in the past a real thing. We're not in that situation, right? Like normal people have no need to abbreviate to that degree. You just need to explain what it is. That being said, I do think sometimes a reaction is complicated enough that making a separate video where you explain it or a separate, avenue where you explain it, and then having a term for what that thing is, that rather complicated thing, is worthwhile. Sometimes these are just things that are very abstract, like the term build. What exactly is a build? What you include in the definition differs from person to person and kind of doesn't matter. And so having a word that just kind of summarizes that feeling is useful. And the same thing with fridging. I think that's a complicated, niche enough subject that I also, by the way, like still really don't understand how that works. So don't don't at me with the fridging thing yet. I need to learn about that first. Is useful. But yeah, broadly, I'm very, very heavily, very strongly against the abstract terminology. It's childish and it is anti-communication. It is communication that is counter to the goal of getting people to understand. I think at the worst, it is often actually done purposefully as a kind of like code word that people don't know so that you can seem smart, which is shitty. That's bad. But a lot of the time, people are just like not really thinking about whether it's actually useful to use that term, and they're not doing anything evil or wrong. They're just being stupid. But go figure. Or not even that, really. That's harsh. Anyway, you get the point. I don't like them, but I think fridging is maybe useful. I am I'm pretty excited for fridging Kave. Anyway, that was a lot of Lisa's stream that isn't about Lisa, but that's completely fine. That'll happen toward the end of these. I think in Genshin Impact, broadly, it may take a little less long sometimes to do a character. I think it's going to I think it's gonna end up it's gonna end up being easier to get through some characters quicker, and then there will be other characters that are a whole can of worms. But Lisa, I thought was I ultimately I think pretty simple. There's not a lot that's actually useful anyway that I think deserves like very lengthy discussion. But there are people who are way into Lisa who would probably say, no, you can get way more catalyzed damage if you play this way and utilize these mechanics. And I read about those, and that's fine. I'm not saying I know everything about this character. I'm just arguing that for the casual enjoyer of Genshin Impact, unless you want to get way into that, I think that the most useful approach is to think of her as a specialist damage support, which is what we built today. And I changed up my build a little bit too. That's always a positive experience for me. But Big Spoon, you were reacting to what I said about disliking like the silly bits of terminology that just makes things less clear. Yeah, I'd better code switch so my buzzwords aren't dog whistles. Well done, except all those things are really clear. Dog whistle is fine because a dog whistle is loud, that's understood. And code switch is an abbreviation that literally just means what the two words mean. And and buzzword is so commonplace that I think that one is basically just a vocabulary term. So yeah, I don't know. Genshin Impact is also itself guilty of the naming thing. I wonder if they did that to create a certain aesthetic. You know, in Genshin Impact, everything has a name, even when it's like ridiculous for things to have a name. It's not really that true for these characters. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, like I think that it's interesting why they choose to do things like Candace's burst here. I'm going to read the effect. It says, raising her weapon on high, Candace calls upon a divine blessing that deals AoE hydro damage based on her max HP, and continuously confers the Prayer of the Crimson Crown on your active character. Prayer of the Crimson Crown. This effect has the following properties. Characters deal increased damage with their normal attacks. When character takes a field, they do hydro damage. Sword, Claymore, and Polearm characters get a hydro infusion. Why isn't, like, this already has a name. The name is Sacred Right Wagtail's Pride, or Candace's Burst. It doesn't have to have another name that is Prayer of the Crimson Crown. You could just say, raising her weapon on high, Candace calls upon a divine blessing that deals AoE hydro damage based on her max HP, and continually confers the following benefits to your active character. They deal increased elemental damage with your normal, like, there's nothing but confusion to be had in them adding an additional name, right? I do think there's a very like Chunibyo or like edgy appeal to having it be like, I'll use my strongest move, White Lightning, and that's like the character's ability. Like in the Yu-Gi-Oh dub, they are probably in the Yu-Gi-Oh sub too. They I remember from a kid how they gave every monster's attack a name that must have been first party to the anime, because they don't have names on the card. So like, you know, Dark Magician would have Dark Magic Blast or whatever. You know, stuff like that. Sometimes they were a lot weirder than that. And that can be fun. That can be fun. But when it's a skill description for the sake of clarity, like, must you? You know what I mean? Like, it's just from an understanding perspective. Do you really need to do that there? I don't know. Especially when some of the effects do one really simple thing, and then you turn right around and have an effect that does like a million things. I don't know. It's just bad explaining. That's all. It doesn't matter. It's just bad. Yeah. Occasionally they're called back to later. Ace, you said the main reason to give things names is to call back to them later. However, oftentimes the later effect uses both names anyway. Savage Burn. I was gonna go with something else, but that was better, so forget it. Shit. Yeah. Again, Darius, from a fun or flavor perspective, I don't hate it. I really don't. Like, Candace is a descendant of the Scarlet King, so she has an ability called like Banner of the Crimson. I don't remember, but you know. Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes it less clear. Like that could be something off to the side that doesn't cloud the ability's name. Or you know what? That could be the ability's name. Maybe there's lore I'm missing on what Wagtail's Pride is, but I feel like naming it something like the Crimson Sacred Right Banner of, for goodness sakes, let's just read what it is. But you see what I'm trying to say. Like, you then use that name there. I don't think this is being done in the name of lore, or if it is, that's not an efficient way to do it. But I would agree with the idea that it could be good in the name of lore. That's certainly a good reason to do it, I suppose. On my deathbed, I will remember that Blue Eyes White Dragon does White Lightning with its attack. I wish I didn't. Apparently, I'm going to be on my deathbed pretty soon, because that makes me want to die. But anyway, that is a thing that works, absolutely. There's also a cultural element. Isn't it a thing in China for stuff to have like multiple names or something? Du Haigo, you said I might be wrong, but it rings like a cultural thing, not a stereotype. No, I think that's perfectly valid. Even something as simple as in China and Chinese culture, I actually don't know. But a simple example that rings a bell is how in Japanese there's an interesting element of when you read someone's name in kanji, the kanji can mean different things, and so the person might often explain like this is like, you know, the character for moon and the character for, sea or something. And maybe there's a different reading of the person's name, and maybe that's why their parents named them that. And it's not even that they made two different names, there just literally are two different readings to that piece of text. I would be very surprised if that was literally why then there's multiple names. But but maybe culturally, that is why the idea of multiple names was attractive. Sure, interesting. I didn't think of that immediately. Burst stream of destruction for blue eyes. Horobi no basto streamu. Horobi no basto streamu. Oh, burst stream. Okay. I was like, something seems wrong there. Horobi, not death. I guess that is destruction. Horobos. Yep. Okay. Huh. That's fun. Anyway, I must have misremembered. The point about the names is right. Thank you for looking up what Blue Eyes White Dragon's actual attack is called. That's very, very needed. This is exactly what you get when you go to this indie stream. No, I'm just kidding. That's wonderful. It's not White Lightning, really. I remember a card called Burst Stream of Destruction that is like the card that lets you do the Blue Eyes attack. Anyway, I wasn't into Yu-Gi-Oh enough, so it's believable that I'm just wrong about that. The dub is White Lightning. Thank you, you saved me. But there is an English Yu-Gi-Oh card, I think, called Burst Stream of Destruction that, and you know what? Kaiba probably says both of them. Friggin' Kaiba, like, if we're being real, he doesn't only have one name. Oh, Kaiba. I don't think I have too much else to say. We certainly don't have anything else to say about Lisa. I don't think anyway. Yeah, we'll talk about Kave and Baiju next week. For people that are keeping up with the accounts rolling, we'll talk about that. I want to quickly give a super quick summary of what we decided on. I'm now going with Hakshin Ring, 4-piece emblem, still an energy recharge, electro damage crit. And I'm using her as a specialty damage buffer. The defense decrease and the damage buff from Hakshin Ring are both rather uncommon damage increases. The problem with this build is her attack is quite low, and she now has a very high damage percent. She has an electro damage cup. She has the damage from emblem, and then she has the damage from Hakshin Ring. When she activates it, she'll get the electro damage. So she would benefit quite highly from an attack buffer, or if there was somehow a way to get a little splash of attack without forfeiting this energy recharge. I doubt that she would gain more damage from this being attack instead of electro damage, but it's probably surprisingly equal. The reason not to swap then would simply be that attack is much more common as a buff than damage percent. That's actually the entire point. That's why it would be valuable. So that's what I like, and I would imagine I would want her in situations very much like where I was using her before. I use this team as an example for a lot of the stream, and this is an example of a team where you benefit a lot from being able to boost damage in unusual ways, because it would have been a little bit more difficult, a little more of a slowdown, to manage something like Animo, Viridis, and Venerer, reducing enemy resistance. That would require a little more micromanagement. Here you can just do it, and you get two pretty uncommon, pretty nice damage boosts. You may very well, on this team, apply the Hakshin Ring damage boosts to everyone, conceivably, because if you put on Electro with Electrocharged, and then Hu Tao triggers Overload, Oh, but she's not triggering overload. Well, anyway, but the hydro characters will get the damage. Good stuff. And since they both match element, they both get the damage too. That's nice. Okay. Anyway, so I still think that's a good example of where she'd be useful. We talked a lot about how prototype Amber is a reasonable choice in my opinion, adding some robust utility, but we do have 2 electro healers already at the time of this recording, and you probably don't have more than one of this. It kind of ditto with Thrilling Tales, although you could have multiple of it, but probably not leveled up. Not sure that matters. So I like Hakshin Ring also because I just don't want it on anyone else at the moment. But yeah, kind of an uncertain environment for Lisa. I do think that Lisa is one of our starters that is a little on the underpowered side. Broadly, I think it's like Amber, Barbara, and Lisa are a little underpowered. And Kaya, Xiangling, Kale, and am I forgetting anyone? Kaya, Xiangling, Kale are really good. Like fantastic, regularly useful, even to enfranchised players. Probably most of all Xiangling. Anyway, but we'll get to them some other time. I do intend to focus on the starter characters first. I think that is useful. That seems valuable to me. Maybe it's not, but that's what we're doing, I think. But I probably won't do them in any particular order, and I might not do them all at once, and we're not going to worry about the order thing too much. Same thing in Warframe. When we do the build lab in Warframe from now on, I'm not going to worry too much about the order of the frames. We're going to decide using more esoteric means. What frame do you just want to talk about? What character feels more relevant, or do I have a new thing to talk about, for example? More than specifically, we're doing this order. That's it. Oh, right, and then, yeah, for people following along with the account progress. A couple of streams ago, or last stream, we had a glorious revelation, which is that this banner has 2 5-star weapons, both of which provide substantial support effects to the party, although 1,000 Floating Dreams is maybe less substantial. Only 40 elemental mastery, but they both provide elemental mastery to the party. I said recently that I am going to change my philosophy about avoiding the weapon banner if the weapon banner provides team support. I think many characters are in the boat that Lisa is in, that we talked about in this stream, where I don't really care about anything on them except things that support the team and their personal damage, but usually there isn't too much to be gained by optimizing that further. On Lisa, running a weapon that would just have increased their personal damage just doesn't gain her that much, because she isn't doing so much personal damage. So while I might not abandon it, her stats can't benefit her any other way anyway, so I'll build some personal damage on her. I would most like a weapon that gives team support. In fact, that's almost the only thing that would do anything valuable. There comes a point in your account's development where you have so many characters that more of the time a character doesn't feel good to use because they have no weapon that has any relevant benefit. And there are a number of weapons that have supportive benefits. This banner is noteworthy because I don't think we have ever gotten a banner, and we may never again, that has 2 supportive weapon effects. So no matter which 5-star you gain a supportive effect. The Zephos Moonlight in the 4-star pool also has some team support bonuses. And Favoni's Greatsword is nice. Really, all those weapons are good. This is a good weapon banner. So yeah, that's we rolled on this and got the things. Yeah, my account is on the character banner is right at the pity threshold, so pretty much it's like really close to almost the next roll I do. Practically 1 or 2 rolls I get the rate at 5-star, so I'll be using that to get Baiju, and then I'm just gonna roll until I get Kave. Or until I run out, but I probably won't run out because he's a 4-star and I have a lot saved up. And we have a while, some big events, so that's the plan. Not that exciting, but that's where we are. Definitely at a point where I feel like my account is beginning to overtake the pace at which we get new things. In other words, I literally always have enough resources to get the new thing now. Not every single 5-star, but every single 4-star, and even some weapon banners along the way, without, for an extremely long time, ever buying anything but the battle pass or the card, which means the I've been playing since the very start though, so that's still a lot. We did have Freedom Sword and Broken Pines a long time ago. Man, it's a sick banner. I wish I had rolled on that. As though it's all the Millennial Movement weapons that are the ones I don't have. That and the Claymore that has the Xephos Moonlight effect. Anyway. Vampire, you said, do consider talking about the Genshin character you were surprised to use in the Spiral Abyss if you do Spiral Abyss before streams. And now and again, I will try to do Spiral Abyss with you all. That I think Proaxel also, that's a point well taken. We have occasionally done a little of that in the past, but that would be valuable, yeah. And it's good feedback that provided a character, I have something to say about them in Spiral Abyss. It's a good idea to include them, sure. Yeah. But anyway, next week we'll talk about Kave and Baiju, just some initial thoughts, nothing too crazy. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to come back sometime, we do this time every week. We don't always do Genshin Impact this time we do always do Genshin Impact this time every week, but we don't always stream Genshin Impact when we stream. And now that I've made this outro long enough, no one is going to follow this advice. That's a rule. If you make it too long, like, there's no point. It becomes too much information, so time to forfeit. Talk to y'all later.